Skull and Dagger, Quill and Bones, you don't think there's any like pedophiles in there? What pedophiles want is to be able to rape children in broad daylight and get away with it. That's what they want. She's the one who said Alan Dershowitz, Whitney Webb pointed this out, as did Maria Farmer. This is where we find out that the Allison Nathan, the judge in the Maxwell trial, was a treat for me to get to see these two luminaries. She's referring to Alan Dershowitz as a luminary. Alan Dershowitz, who's been named. How come he hasn't been arrested? Prince Andrew just made a deal with Virginia Roberts Giuffre to settle out of court financially. Let's not forget, too, this is again from Whitney Webb. Absent from mainstream discourse on Ghislaine Maxwell's ongoing trial is any mention of the ties, not only of herself, but her family, to Israeli intelligence. Those ties, forged by Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, are critical to understanding Ghislaine's history and her role in Jeffrey Epstein's sexual blackmail and trafficking network. This is something Whitney Webb has done a fantastic job covering, and her and I have talked about it on my show numerous times, which is this private intelligence 2 years ago. He said that. He also said when Epstein died, he said to his friend, this looks like they're Israelis, is what John Kiriakou said on this show. He was asking the question, did Mossad have something to do with Epstein's death? Also, where is Ghislaine Maxwell's headshot? There is none. There is none. This is all we get from the trial, these sketch drawings. No photographs of this. We can find these photographs. Virginia Roberts, Prince Andrew, Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia Roberts was a child at the time. Here's photographs. Trump hanging out with Prince Andrew while he was president. June. More photos. Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. This was in 2011. This was 2 years after she settled out of court. So there's all these photos, but there's not one photo from any of these trials. Here's Maxwell's siblings defending her. This is outside of the courthouse. These rat-faced pedophile supporters, because Ghislaine Maxwell was a pedophile. They always call her pimp and madam. They always change it. But she participated. So she's a pedophile. She's a rapist. If you have small children, watch out for female pedophiles too. Not just there's male pedophiles, but there's a lot of female pedophiles. So these people are outside the courthouse. There's a journalist getting photos. Why can't we get any of this? Here's some other photos. Oh, here's Trump. There's also these two, Epstein and Maxwell, were invited to Clinton's White House in the 90s. Here's Bill Gates, Jeffrey Epstein, the CEO of Barclays, Les Stanley, and also JP Morgan Chase later, Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary, Boris Nikolic, who was Gates' advisors, and he was the executor of his will. He ran the finances for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You remember Melinda Gates? She left her husband because of all the Epstein connections. We're going to go online right now in real time, and we're going to just look. And I'm going to use Google. Let me use the biggest. I'm not a fan. I usually use ecosia.org, but we're going to just use Google because I want to see, are there any mugshots of, and oh, by the way, Gene Brunel just happened to hang himself. And this story, this is from like BuzzFeed, and it was on all those types of news outlets. But I'm going to just show you, they're trying to sell us that this was a legitimate suicide. I just want to show you, this is the language in the story, not my language. The 76-year-old was found during a nighttime check by guards at La Sante early Saturday, officials told Le Monde, right? That's a French publication. His attorneys told the paper that the apparent suicide was not driven by guilt, but by a deep sense of injustice. Let's try to follow that logic. So I guess the logic they're saying is Jean-Luc Brunel was innocent and he was arrested. It was an injustice. This is his lawyers, I guess, are trying to frame it this way. And again, we talk a lot about the framing of the Epstein, because we know this from the Maria Farmer interview with Whitney Webb. We know this. I've shown this to you. I have a whole Epstein playlist on YouTube. Watch all of them, because I've traced this. And one of the things we've seen is that there is a global pedophile sex trafficking ring run by the most wealthy, powerful people in the world. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We know this from Epstein survivors like Virginia Roberts Giuffre and Maria Farmer and Annie Farmer. We know this from flight logs. We know this from photos. We know this from pretty hard evidence, right? We know this from sworn depositions, that these are the most wealthy people in the world. We've heard the biggest names. We've heard Trump was mentioned, right? But I'm showing you so the most powerful people in the world, they control everything. So what they never want is to show how people to really see what's really happening. So they always try to seal it off, right? When Epstein was murdered in prison, oh, he hung himself. They wanted it to go away. It didn't. Hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself trended. No, everyone was talking about it. When I saw Lindsey Graham talking about it in a congressional hearing, I was like, oh man, this is not what they want. So they've been when these people get arrested, it's been very sealed off. We haven't heard anything about this. So now they're trying to seal it off like it was legit suicide. He was tired of the injustice. So if you think this something is an injustice, you would hang yourself? Really? Nelson Mandela was a victim of injustice. He didn't hang himself. I'm sure he had dark days where he wanted to, but he didn't hang himself. He stayed in prison for 30 years and got out and righted that wrong. Julian Assange hasn't hung himself because he knows he's innocent. You see all these people who they know they're innocent, they don't hang themselves. Jean-Luc Brunel hung himself. The suicide of Jean-Luc Brunel, this is a quote by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. The suicide of Jean-Luc Brunel, who abused me and countless girls and women, ends another chapter. I am disappointed that I was not able to face him in a final trial. And he got like twin 12-year-olds for Epstein. I mean, he was on Epstein's plane countless times, as was Maxwell. So when you start seeing the most powerful people in the world, right? So we know Bill Clinton has been on 26 times, despite the fact he only said he was on 4 times. Right there, that's how guilty person. Hillary was on his plane twice. Flight logs show this. The Clintons were at his compound, Epstein's compound in New Mexico, numerous times. Originally, we only had one flight log of Trump, which Trump supporters and the QAnon crowd was like, see, he just was on one time. He saw this guy was awful, and that's why the QAnon people think that Trump was going to bring down the global pedophile ring. Well, here's another thing that came out in the Maxwell trial in December, the last week of the trial. 118 pages of flight logs were released. In it, we found 4 more flights that Trump took on Epstein's plane, totaling 5. And the media said nothing. That was the most glaring silence you would think. Joyanne Reed, Rachel Maddow, all these people, Jake Tapper, who just hate Trump and cashed in on talking about how bad he was, would have jumped all over that news, and they said nothing. So it's become very clear. All of these arrests are very much to just keep this shut down. Why isn't this Jean-Luc Brunel committing suicide in prison just like Epstein? This is like a glaring, no one has a question. No journalist is like, wait a minute. Nobody? Just me and other YouTubers like me and people on social media?